so let's go ahead and get started. So the goal of this one is just to get a little intro, I guess, to CSS transitions and animations. So I'm going to be going over some simple examples and some interesting ways that you can use them. And hopefully, you'll be able to learn and implement it into your own projects. And I don't know if y'all want to follow along. If not, so all I have set up right now is just an index HTML with a style CSS, and then I have an assets folder. I'll share it out later if you are following. But for now, it's just an index HTML and a style sheet. Okay. Yeah. So, and the way I'm gonna start off with. So before getting into the transitions, well, no, I'm gonna get into the transitions now, but I'm just gonna make some super simple examples right now, and I'm also gonna just do a little quick review of CSS position. So I'm just gonna go ahead and set this page up. So I'm just gonna set a regular old index HTML, and I'm gonna link my style sheet. And just to make sure that the style sheet is linked correctly, I'm going to change the background color. Oops, not clip. Background color. What's a good one? Peach buff, is that? Yeah. Oh, also, I'm going to make this run with live server so that I can see the changes right away. I'm just going to go live now. Cool, so that worked. It changed the color of my background to peach, so I know that the CSS is working. It's connected nicely. So, first off, I just want to do a quick little run through of position relative and position absolute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a div in my HTML. I'm going to give it a class of just going to call it box1. Okay. And in my style sheet, I am going to target box1 and give it a, let's say, width of 200 pixels and a height of, let's see if we could do a shortcut. There we go, 200 pixels, and a background color of fire brick. Cool, so now I have a box. Let's actually make that bigger. So 400 pixels. Yeah. So now I have this box that's 400 pixels, and I want to position it in a different area, and I'm just going to give you a quick little example of how you can do that. So there's this CSS property called position. Now I can give it a position of the box of position of relative, right? And then I can move it to wherever I want depending on which side I choose. So I'm gonna say from the right, I want the box to move 200 pixels. And as you can see that from the right side, which is this side over here, it moved 200 pixels to the left. So from the right, it moved 200 pixels to the left. And we can use different kinds of measurements here. So we can do negative numbers as well. So if I want to move it 200 pixels from the right, now we have to move negative 200 pixels to the right. And I can make it go negative 100 pixels from the top. And you see that now it's like, I can't even see the whole thing because it's going up into my web browser. Does that make sense? So you're changing the position of the element relative to itself. Right. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just take that off so we can have a regular old box. And I'm going to make a second box now. And this second box, I'm going to make it inside of the first box. All right, so I'm going to give it a class name of box2. Whoops, this is not React. So box2. And I'm going to make this one a little smaller. Not a little, a lot smaller. So I'm going to give this one 100 pixels width and 100 pixels height. And the background color, let's say blue violet. So now we have a box inside of another one, right? Now let's say that I want to change it and I want to move this box inside the first box, right? I can give this box now a position of absolute. And I'm going to say top, let's say 100 pixels. Jenny, what happened there? The top of what though? Right, so I gave the little box top 100 pixels, right? But 100 pixels from where? It moved down. So from the top, I gave it 100 pixels, right? I moved the position, right? But 100 pixels specifically from where though? Trey, do you know? From the top of what? Box one, yeah. So there's a distinction between the position relative that I gave box one and position absolute that I gave box two. So box one, I was moving it around relative to its own position. But since I gave box two a position of absolute, I'm moving it according to the position of box one. So it's 100 pixels from the top of box one. And then I can move it, let's say 50 pixels from the left of box one. So that space in between like the edge and the purple box, it's 50 pixels. And I'm showing you this because then it'll make more sense when it comes to adding transitions later on. Because we do have to use, for certain transitions, we do have to use positioning. So does that make sense? Any questions on that? Cool. So the next thing I wanted to show ya was, let's get into some transitions. So now that, let's just make another div. All right. I keep doing that. I'm gonna keep doing that. Box 3. Right. It's gonna copy this. Cool. So you know what? I'm gonna center all this just so it's a little nicer. Let me use display flux, flux direction, column, specify content, center. Boom. So now that we have this box, right? I want to add a transition to it. So, and just so you can see the difference better, I'm going to add the transition to its hover state. Right? So, I'm going to target box 3 again. Oops. And on hover, so whenever I hover over box 3, I want to add a transition. And the one I'm going to add, so there are different options that we have for transition, and the one I'm going to use now is transform. So I want to transform on the x-axis. I want it to move 100 pixels. Whoops. Actually close that. And I think I still need to give this up just in a relative. Oh wait, forgot that. So when I give it a sorry. Oh wait, I'm doing this all wrong. Sorry. So it's not a transition, it's a transform here, sorry, and then translate. I'm mixing up with transition because transition goes on the actual box itself. So on the transform, we have multiple options, and in this case, I want to translate it on the x-axis 100 pixels on hover, right? So let's give it more. So when I hover this, I should expect to see it move 200 pixels to the right. Right? And I can do a lot, so I can make it Y. So we can also do it on the y-axis. So as you can see, it goes down. It's only flickering like that because we have no space. I can also give it negative values. So as you can see, it's moving 200 pixels up on hover. And, I mean, that's pretty, like, let's move it back to the x-axis, right? Like, I don't know, that looks kind of janky to me. It's not that smooth. What if I do want to give it, like, a smooth animation, right? From it moving from point A to point B, right? So what I have to do is I have to target the box and give it a transition. And in this case, so you have different options here. You can specifically target the thing that you want to add this transition to. In this case, our transform. If we have a bunch of things that change, we can set it to all, or we don't have to put anything at all, and it'll automatically just add it to everything. In this case, I want to be specific, so I'll add it to the transform, right? And I want this change from the regular state to the hover state. I want it to take 3 seconds. So I'm going to put 3S for 3 seconds. So when I hover this, I should expect that this is going to take 3 seconds to complete. And it does. So it took 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that's pretty cool, right? So it looks super smooth. You probably don't want it that long in actuality. I usually like adding like something like 0.5. Super smooth, super nice. But it can be as long as we want. We can actually also add a transition delay. And let's say we want it to be 3 seconds. So when I hover over it, I should expect that it will not move for 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, and then it moved. And you can actually add this on the same line. Just wanted to show you. So all of these properties that I'm adding, they actually have their own specific property for each one, but I just like to do it all on one line. Oops. So 1, 2, 3, and then it moves. And the way that this works, I know that might be confusing because I have seconds here and seconds there, but the way it works is that duration is the first second value for seconds, and the second value is always going to be delay. Everything else, it can be in whichever order you want. So we can put the transform later or after the 0.5, but always, duration is going to be first, and then delay is going to be taken second. And you can also add like some other cool things. I'm going to take the delay off. That's too long. There's these things called like easing functions in CSS. You can make your own custom ones. There's some built in. They're a little. You have to like. They're a little. I'm gonna put the seconds up because I feel like it'll be easier to see. So they're very small, minute. You have to like. I feel like you need that design eye in a lot of cases to like really see what it's doing. But I'm gonna ease it in the transition, right? So I'm gonna hover over it. Maybe 5 seconds was too long. Can't really see it there. I'm gonna do 1 second. Maybe see if we can. So I don't know if you caught that, what the change was. So it's still, so I have it set to 1 second, and it's still taking 1 second to finish the movement, right? But it's very subtle. But in the beginning of the movement, it's slow, and then it speeds up. But it's still taking 1 second. And then we have different options, ease in, ease out. So basically it's gonna start fast and then slow down. So you saw that? And then we have ease in, out. So it's gonna start fast, go slow, and then, no. It'll start slow, go fast, and then end slow. Very subtle, but depending on the animation or transition, that might be a really nice effect. And you can make your own custom easing functions with, I think they're called, I believe they're called cubic Bezier. Yeah, so this is basically in visual form. This is what this is basically what the ease in looks like. This is what the ease out. I want to see if you can actually animate it. I guess not. There's some websites that you actually see the animation. I'll share it if I find it later. But yeah, that's pretty awesome, right? So as you can see, you can add some like really nice transitions to your elements. Something else that we can do. So I'm gonna comment this one out. So we can also transform, right? And another one that's very common is scale. And scale, it takes a number value, so let's say 1.5. So on hover, we should see a scale of 1.5. So it's scaled to 1.5 of the height and width. If we do 2, it'll scale 2 times the height and width of the element. And since we have that transition, we see that it's like really nice and smooth. So pretty straightforward, right? Huh? Say again? Oh, a robot? It looks like a robot, right? Oh, that would have been nice. I should have prepared that. Actually, something I'm making later, I could probably put it in there. That'd be nice. Yeah, so that's like pretty simple, pretty nice. But like, how can you actually use these two, like, well, transitions? how can you use these transforms in a way to like create something nice, right, for your website? And it doesn't have to be too crazy. Just something really simple. So I want to show you how using this stuff you can create something really nice. But I'm also going to introduce something else. Um, and the reason I'm gonna introduce like this other thing is because it is a little complicated, but I feel like like the classes I've had in the past for transitions and animations, this is pretty much it. Like we've made boxes and we made boxes move and that's it. Like no, let's like create something that is like useful, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a button. All right, we make buttons a lot, right? I'm gonna use an A tag for this one. Yeah. Um, so I'm just gonna say this is a button. And I'm going to give it a class name or class one. Oh, and if there's anything that I do that you haven't seen before or you just have questions about, just stop me and let me know. So margin, so top and bottom, let's just do 100. And then side 0. So does everyone know what that means? So I added two values to March, so 200px here and then 100 there. Correct, yeah. So the first one is top, bottom, and then the second one is left, right. Yeah, so, wait, make sure, yeah, so this, we got a button there. Let's give it some padding. Pixels, order, one, say 3px, solid. This is a sad one, but let's do Rebecca purple. Color, Rebecca purple. And then take off that underline. Cool. Anyone see that? It's good? Looks good. So, basically, I'm gonna want on hover, right? I want to add a nice animation to this, or not an animation, a nice little transition to this button. So when I hover it, and the way I'm gonna do that is, well, what I want to do is so, but essentially, when I hover it, I want the background to change to purple. I want the font to change to white. Right? And I want the background, instead of just fading into purple, I want the background to come from left to right. I want it to slide over this. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to use something, a pseudo selector. Right? And essentially what I'm doing is I'm essentially going to make a copy of the button. And then the copy of the button is what's going to slide out. Right? And now the pseudo selector that I'm going to use is, I'm gonna target the button itself, right? And the pseudo selector I'm gonna use is before. Has anyone here seen that before? Huh? You seen it before? Huh? Seen it before? Do you know what it is, or like how to explain it? It's like a space before. Mm, that's a good way of putting it. Um, it's more like this is what this is the stuff before the content in the element, essentially. So, like, say you have an element, and, well, we do have an element, right? So we have a button. So imagine it that like before this content, we have another something else here, like another div or another box, another element, another something, and that's what the before is. And then imagine after the content that there's also another one called after. In this case, we're only going to use before. Okay? And in order to use these pseudo elements, you need to use a property called content. In this case, we actually don't need to add anything in there, so I'm just gonna leave it empty quotes. But we do need to add it. So this won't work without that. And this, and this is going back to that first example, or the second example I showed you, where the box inside of another box. Think of it like that, right? And if we want to move that second box around inside of the first one, we need to add a position to it. We need to add position absolute, because that's essentially what we're going to be doing. We're going to be moving um, the pseudo element around inside of the original. All right, so we need to give it a position. So in this case, I'm going to give it position absolute. And since we're giving this button or this before pseudo element the position of absolute, that means we need to. You can think of like the original element as the parent of the pseudo element, kind of. So we're gonna need to give the original button a position, because if we don't, then I don't know if you don't know how position absolute works. If the parent of a child element that has position absolute, if the parent does not have a position attached to it, it's going to keep going up the tree to find an element that has a position attached to it. So it's going to keep going to see what it can attach itself to until it just reaches to the actual HTML page. So if you forget to put a position on the parent of a child that's position absolute, the child is going to get attached to the HTML, and you're going to be like, what's going on? So always remember, if you're going to use position absolute, always check to see if the parent has some sort of position attached to it as well. Okay? And just so we can see this thing, I'm going to give it a background color. Let's give it something wild now so we can make sure we see it, like pink, right? And you can also think of it as like right now, because we can't see anything yet, right? So it's kind of like a div right now. If a div has no content, we can't see it, right? So we have to give a div either content or a width and height so we can see it, right? And we have to do the same thing here. So in order to see this before element, we're going to need to give it a width and height. So width, and I'm actually going to give it 100% because I want it to take 100% of the original element, the original button. And I also want it to take 100% of the original element's height, so width and height. So let's see if we can see it now. Boom. We can actually see something now, right? So you see that it's above the button. For some reason, it's positioned off to the bottom right. The way I think this is working is that it's getting attached. Yeah. So since it's before the content, it's getting attached. You see, it's starting here because that's where the content starts. That's where the actual words are. But we don't want it there. I don't want it there. I want it at the very top. So how can I position something? It's already positioned absolute. So how do I make it go to the top of that element? Does anyone know? She's staring at me. So I will scroll back up to this example, right? So box 2 was positioned 100 pixels from the top of that first box, right? So in this case, I want it to be at the top. I want it to touch the top of the box. So what's that gonna be? Well, it's already position absolute. Okay. So what's the values that we're gonna give it here? I mean, top, right? Top what? 0. Exactly. So let's see if that works. Boom. So it's positioned 0 pixels from the top of that element. And it's not covering the purple part because that's the border. It's not counting that in. Alright? And I also wanted to touch the left side, right? So I'm going to do left, 0. So now we see that this pseudo element is covering our content, covering 100% of this element that we've made, minus the border, right? But something's wrong. Like we can't see the words, the content. We actually want to see it. So does anyone know how to change the order in terms of like level, I guess, of elements? Z index, right? So what I'm gonna, so now I need to give it a Z index. So the regular Z index is, I believe, 0 by default. So I'm gonna give it -1. Boom. So now we can see the actual content on the page, right? So no, so in this case, it can, but in this case, that's not what I did. What I did, so basically, what was happening was so this hand is the pink, right? The pink pseudo element. This hand is the content, this pseudo bar, right? So what was happening was, by default, the pseudo element, the before pseudo element was on top of the content. So what I did was, I didn't move this forward, I moved the pseudo element behind the content. That's what I did. So now you can see it. And that's what so by default, the index is 0. So that's why I gave it -1. And like it doesn't have to, like it could be anything, just as long as it's the lowest one. So it could be like -1000. Still gonna work. Minus a million. It's just you need to make sure that it's lower than what the element that you're trying to move it under. Cool. So now that we got that there, right? This is the thing. This is the box that I'm going to make slide in on hover. So since I'm going to make it slide in on hover, this is not where I want it to start. I actually want it to start off to the side, right? So we learned this a little while ago. So how can I move something? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my transform, and then translate on the x-axis minus. Let's just do like 50% right now, just so you can see, right? Boom. So I moved it. Yeah, 50%. I meant to say 50 pixels, but so I moved it 50% to the side. So that means if I want it all the way out the way, it would have been 100%. So, boom. Now it's 100% out of the way. All right? And since it's out of the way, I'm actually going to change this to purple. Or the blue, violet. What's it? Yeah. Boom. So now it's blue, violet. And now my goal is on hover, I need to move this thing back. Okay? So what I'm going to do, this part actually always gets me. Cool. So on hover, I want the before to change. If you don't remember, this is fine because I always have to look it up. I always put it the other way. Oops. So on hover of the button, I want the before to do something. And what that something is, it's really simple. I'm going to make it transform, translate x, back to 0, back to its original position. Boom. Is that not the same color I put up? Oh, I put Rebecca purple up here. Let's do Rebecca purple. Super sad story about Rebecca purple. if you want to look into it. We won't talk about it right now. Boom. So now on hover, my pseudo class element is going right back over the content where it originally was. Hmm? Oh, like like your eye is like still. Cool, but that's still like that's not smooth. How do we make it smooth again? Like, yeah. So we added transition, right? So so we gotta add a transition, right? And we're gonna say translate, right? And then how long do we want it to take? Let's say 1 second, right? Let's see if that works. Nope. I think we added it to the wrong place. This is another thing that I always have to look up. Since it's a hover before, I believe we may have to add it to the before. Nope. Transition. Okay, let me see something. Oh wait. Transform. There we go. Yeah. So in this case, we had to add it to the actual before element, not the original one. So boom. So now when we hover, it's taking 1 second to slide back over to its original position. Super nice. Something else we want to do. We should change the color of the font so we see it once it slides back in, right? So I'm going to add a hover to this original button. So button, color, white. Let's also add a nice transition to it. Boom. So we're almost done. The only thing now is that we don't want to see it when we're over here, right? But that's a simple fix. All we need to do is add overflow, hit it. So anything outside of that div disappears. Or in this case, this button disappears. And now, with that, we just made a super nice and smooth, clean button. Super simple. I mean, I think the hardest thing to get over is this how to use the pseudo. But once you start using it more, it just makes more sense. But yeah, it's pretty simple. Like real quick, we just made a super nice button instead of using a boring old default button or something like that. Or and this is way more customizable than a bootstrap button. And you can do some other crazy stuff with this. You can get into some interesting things. I'm actually going to I'm gonna get a little crazier with this one, just so you can see. So I'm gonna make another button. Oops. You know what? Yeah. All right. So I made another button, right? And I'm gonna use a different kind of transition for this one. This one, it may be a little harder to grasp. Um, and in order to do that, I'm going to actually, before doing that, I'm going to just make another div right now, right? Um, so I'm going to give it a width of 100. Oops. Height 400. Background color. It's aquamarine. Oops. Box 4. So I am going to give this a transform, right? And instead of translate, I'm actually going to rotate it, right? Rotate, and this one can take degrees, so I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. It might have to be position relative. This is X. Okay. Yeah, because when you use just rotate, I think it needs two. So I'm gonna show this instead. Um, I did rotate X 90 degrees and it disappeared. Can anyone guess why? Huh? On the bottom of? It's not. It's still there. um, which way to rotate it? That's right. So right. So exactly. So like. So it's like, this is the original box. I just rotated it 90 degrees. So it went like this. So it's perfectly like lined up like that. That's what you can see. Right? So 90 degrees, rotate X, did that, right? So if I went to do 90 degrees Y, it would move it perfectly this way where you can't see it, right? So like, there's like way more things. I'm not gonna get into it because it's like pretty crazy with perspective and stuff. But with that, you can get some nice like interesting things, right? So that's what I'm gonna try to do with this button right here. So on this button, I'm actually going to use both the before and the after pseudo class, right? So box 4, before. I am going to give it very similar. So I'm just going to copy this to save time. Oh wait, I'm at button. Sorry. So right now I have a before on top of this, right? And I'm gonna add an after. You know what? Let's change the color to some other color, right? So you can see what's actually happening. So right now I have this after, it's yellow, it's under there, and I am going to rotate it 90 degrees. And then on hover, oops. On hover, I'm gonna transform that back to its original position. So do you understand what's happening there? So on hover, it's like flat and it's going back up to its original position, right? So I'm actually gonna do another one of these. I'm gonna copy this. And instead of before, I'm gonna use after, right? Oops. But I'm gonna use this one on the y-axis. So I'm gonna change the color back to light coral. Hold on, let's add a hover for the button so we can change the color of the font to white. So now we got this super smooth animation using both the x-axis and the y-axis for a rotate. And you can take it way crazier than this, way deeper. This is just one example. And they didn't even take that long, right? And this is, I think, like And this way, it's more customizable. It'll have more of like your personality, especially if you're making a website, especially if it's like a portfolio website. And you know, you don't need to rely on like bootstrap styles or anything like that. You can like simply like create these things yourself. So with that, now I wanted it. Do you want to take a break? All right, cool. Um, uh, I think my computer wants to take a break. So yeah, I'm gonna take a break now. I'm gonna get into like some animations. I'll start off with a simple box animation, and I'm gonna use the same one as before, box 4. So, but I'm just gonna make it smaller. I don't want it that big. So, height, and so let's see here. So let's say that I want the box to continuously move back and forth on its own. I don't have to hover over it. I just want it to move over and over on its own, right? I'm gonna create an animation for that, right? And the way you do that in CSS is you use this keyword, keyframes, right? And you have to give it a name. And this name, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just gonna call it moving or moving box. I don't know. Right? And then you like this animation. Think of it of it having like a beginning and end, and we are going to um, like customize that or in some way, right? And there's a couple different ways to do it. This first one I'll use from. So basically, I want this box to start at its original position where it is right now, right? Translate X, right? And particular about that. So from its original position, I want it to transform, translate on the x-axis. Let's see how this works. All right. Now, obviously, that's not doing nothing because we didn't actually attach it to the element, right? So keep in mind, when you make an animation, you need to tell CSS where this animation is going to be used, right? So the way you do that is you do animation name, and then I'm just gonna give it moving box. Moving box. So I gave it animation, moving box, and I have to give it a duration, I believe. So animation duration. So it's very similar to what we did before. We gave it a duration of how long that animation was going to take. Let's say 1 second. And it's not working. Oh, there we go. So it stopped. But did you see that? From its original position, it moved 500 pixels on the x-axis. But I keep refreshing it. So what if we want to keep seeing it, right? Well, there's this thing called animation. Oops. Iteration count. Right. And we can say 5. All right. So it'll run the animation 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it stops. In this case, I don't want to stop, so I'm just going to give it infinite. So that means it's going to keep doing animation over and over and over and over again forever. And very similar to the previous transition, like the transition or the transform property. When we made it transition, we also gave it a delay, right? So we can do that too. So animation delay. So let's say 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, and then it starts. So it took 3 seconds for the animation to actually start. I'm going to take that off. That's too long. What else can we do with animations? We can... This one I actually learned last night. Field mode. So we can do field mode. And this one, I actually don't remember the properties it takes. Is it reverse? It's not reverse. Maybe backwards. I don't remember what it takes. Animation, fill mode. No, it is forward. And backwards. Animation, fill mode. Yeah, I'm not sure why that one's not working. Yeah, I'm not sure what that's working, but what I'm supposed to see with that instead of starting from the beginning, it'll start from the end back, right? So, actually no, I think I may be getting that confused with something else. Film mode. I don't remember what that is. Animation. Let me try this one. This one. Also, this one's working backwards. So what does this do? Yeah. Don't remember what that's used for. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, so now I can also start it from the end, going backwards, right? So it's pretty cool stuff, pretty nice things. If the other nice thing about animations is like, so right now I just gave it 2 options, right? I gave it where to start and where to end, right? So from, to. What if we want more, right? So a really nice way of doing that. We can actually give a percentage. So at 0%, I want it to be that. And let's say at 100%, I want it to be this, right? Let's just see what that does. Still doing the same thing. Let me actually remove the reverse, right? So starting at 0, and then the translate X is moving 500 pixels at 100%, right? Now let's add something. Let's say that I wanted, let's say I wanted to move it up, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to change this into 50%, right? And then at 100%, I want transform, translate, Y, 500 pixels. Oops. Let's do negative. So, at 0%, it's its original position. At 50%, it's 500 pixels to the right. And then at 100%, it's 500 pixels above its original position, right? So we're getting crazy. Let's put the seconds. Let's make it a little slower so we can see it. So nice, right? You can start getting with some nice animations, and we can put more. We can put at 10%. We wanted to do something different. At 30%, we can get crazy with this stuff. Um, and I'm actually, again, to not only just show you a box moving around, I'm going to show you how to actually make something useful with these animations, right? So what I'm going to do is you know what? Let's do it. No, let's make a new box. Box 5. Right. And I don't want to see this thing moving anymore, so I'm just going to take that off. All right, so box 5. I am not going to give it a inner color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a border instead, right? But I don't want to give it a border on all sides, and I'll show you why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do border top 1px solid let's say firebrick. All right. Oh wait, but I also need to give it a height and width, right? So width, let's do 400 pixels, and then height, let's do 400 pixels. It's Emmet doing that. Emmet. Yeah, it's built into VS Code, and I think you can add it to all the other ones. Yeah, you can get pretty crazy with it. So let's see here. Let's give it some margin. Cool. So, let's make that a little more solid. Cool. So, I'm gonna say margin left, or border left, sorry, and then border bottom. All right. So, right now I have a box with 3 sides that have borders on them, and I actually don't want that to be a box anymore. I want that to have a radius of 50%. Let's see how that works. Cool. You know what? Let's leave it like that. So now I have this circle, and you can kind of see this. You know what? Let's give that a color. Actually, I don't like how that looks. Let's say yellow, so we can see it. Whoops. Cool. Now, I want to create an animation. So how do we do that again? I'm going to add a keyframe, right? I'm going to say rotate, right? So at 0%, I want to transform this div, this box, that is actually no longer a box. I wanted to rotate, so this one's going to be 0. And then at 100%, I want to rotate 360 degrees, right? So again, in order to actually use an animation, you need to edit. And I don't like this super long. You see how in this one I kind of gave each property its own line. We can actually don't have to do that. We can just do animation, and we can do it all on one line. So I'm gonna say rotate, because that's the name of the animation. That's what I gave the animation. All right, rotate. And then let's say it's going to take 3 seconds. Let's just give it that for now. I think that should be fine. Boom. So now it took 3 seconds. Let's actually give it an infinite, right? so that it just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going. So I don't like the fact that it kind of, you see how like once it gets to the end, it slows down and it stops, and then it starts again, and it slows down and it stops. But there's actually another property that we can give this, right? Um, and it's a property that it allows it to keep the same speed as it's going through the animation, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a property of linear. So it's gonna keep the same speed throughout the entire animation, right? So now, as you can see, like it's real smooth. It doesn't stop. You don't see it stop. And let's actually make it go a little faster, right? It's super big, but we just made ourselves a loading screen, right? Like, and that's a super quick loading screen. I didn't have to find it on Bootstrap or anything. I can import it wherever I want. It's not using JavaScript. It's just straight up CSS. So got myself a loading screen right there. And it's just a simple animation. It's not anything crazy. It's just at its original position when the animation starts. I want it at 0. At 100%, I want it to rotate 360. That's all. Yeah, so we can add as the same way that in the transition that we added all the properties in the same line, we can add all like these properties in the same line as well. The order does not matter. Again, the only order that does matter is the seconds. So the duration always comes before the delay. So if you add 2 second values, 2 values that happen to be seconds, the first one will be duration, the second one will be delay. So now it's going to reverse, but it's taking 3 seconds for it to actually start. And then it starts going. And there's more cool stuff we can do with that. If y'all wanna see more, yeah. This one, I actually saw this example earlier, which I thought was like super cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make another div. Right, so class. I'm gonna call this one city. All right. Why is that bugging me? Oh, it must be in double quotes. Okay, if you say so. All right. So the city section, right? I'm going to make the height 100 VH. I want it to be really big. So does anyone know what VH is? No. View height, viewport height. Yeah. So basically, I have it set to 100. I'll change the background color so you can see it. So background color. This is like aquamarine or something. Oops. I just saved it. Oh, I made a new one. Don't need that. Yeah. Oops. Does it? Wait. Yeah, there we go. So I have this whole section. It's 100 VH. So basically, it's taking 100% of whatever the screen is. My actual like viewable full browser. So whatever the space that I actually have in the browser, that's the height of that div. So if I make it 90 VH, it's only going to be 90. Whoops, wrong one. It's basically going to only be like 90 like percent, I guess, of the screen that's available in the browser right there. Let me change it back to 100. Right. So I am going to give this a background actually. So background image. Right. Background image and URL. Oops. Assets. Background. I keep doing that. Oh. You know what? This isn't big enough. Oh, wait, let me see something. So, background, position, bottom. What? Is that it? It's better. So now I have this city div, right? And I want to animate this in a certain way, right? And as you can see right now that I gave it a position of bottom left. So that means that its position in this div right now, I'm starting with bottom left and I'm actually going to change that, right? Don't think I need it here though. So I'm gonna put it, yeah, I might not need that there. I'll leave that there for now, but let me make the animation. Right. Let's get it moving. And then at 0%. I want the background position to be, so this is where I actually need to do this, I believe. So position, right? And then at 100%, I want the background position to be bottom right. And then I'm going to add the animation. Moving, and it's going to, let's say, 3 seconds. Hoping this works. Okay, no, why? Well, not hyphenated, it's bottom, space, left, bottom, right. And I want this to be infinite. So I want it to keep going over and over and over and over and over and over again, but I also want it to be more smooth. I don't want it to stop when the animation is over. So that's where I'm going to add the linear property. Looks like it's going a little too fast, so I'm going to slow that down. Still too fast. My eyes are hurting. Okay, that looks a little better. So now we are moving this picture, this image, infinitely over and over and over again. So what I'm going to do is, inside of this div, I'm going to add another image. On this one, all right, so it's a PNG. So I just added this image in here. It's a motorcycle. It's super big. I don't need it to be that big. So I'm going to target the image. I'm going to make the height way smaller. Oops. Let's see 100 pixels, see what that looks like. Cool. I don't know. Can you see that? Little guys over there. All right. but he's in the wrong place. Motorcycles can't fly. So now we're gonna go back to our friend, the position, right? We used it earlier. So position, absolute, and I'm gonna position it absolutely from the bottom. Let's say 50 pixels. I don't know if that's right. And you can't forget that we also need to give the parent a position, unless then it won't work. So let's actually move this guy. How should we move him? Let's use what we learned, right? Transform, translate on the X, thank you. Let's say 400 pixels. Boom, so now we got, I don't know why it's not, there we got motorcycle dude driving through the city. Super nice, super clean, nice animation. You could throw that on a website and it's gonna look lit. I also got a car, but it's gonna look the same way. So yeah, so super quick, super nice animation. We just added 2 pictures together and we made like, this is a story going on right now. It didn't even take that long to make. So that's pretty awesome, right? Now I got one more thing to show y'all for this animation thing. So I basically showed y'all how to create, a loading screen. Showed y'all how to use assets and just put them together to make something. Now this one is it's super simple, but it's kind of like to show you that you can be more creative with CSS and you can actually create something pretty cool. I'm gonna stop this because I'm tired of seeing it spin. So I don't want that to, there we go. So I'm gonna add one more div. Div. And I'm gonna give it a class name. I'm not gonna tell y'all what it is yet because I want you to guess. Creation. So I'm gonna target that. I'm gonna give it some margin on top so we can have some space. Cool. So let's give it some height. Let's say 200 pixels. Give it a width of 200 pixels. And let's give it background color of, I like using the fun names. Let's go with it. No, wait, no, let's not do that. Medium violet red. Oh, that's still, well, never mind. Cool, so now I got a box, right? Now, I'm gonna go back to our friends, the after and the before pseudo class that we used earlier, right? So I'm gonna create basically a copy of that div, right? With my before pseudo class, oops. Right. And what do we have to do? We have to give it content, right? So content doesn't have to be anything, it could be empty, right? We definitely need a position. Position needs to be absolute, right? And I'm gonna give the parent a position of absolute. And I'm gonna give it a width of 100%. And a height, I don't know why I keep not using the shortcuts. Height of 100%, right? And so now let's see what we got so far. Oh, we didn't give it a background color. Oops, sorry. Good point. Meant relative. It actually disappeared because it moved all the way to the top of the of the page. Yep. So now background color. It's gonna take a while. Yellow. So now we just made. So now we have this before pseudo class on top of our element. I'm gonna move it up a little bit. Right. So I'm gonna give it a transform. Right. Translate y. And let's say minus 50%. So now we just move the box up, right? And I'm pretty much just gonna copy this to save time. So I'm gonna make another copy of it, but this time I'm gonna use the after pseudo class, right? I'm gonna make this green. And instead of moving it up, I wanna move it to the left. So I'm gonna translate X 50%. Boom. So now, can anyone see what I'm making there? No? Yeah, no? Huh? Uh, so what I'm gonna do is, maybe this will give you a little hint. So I'm gonna rotate it. Oh, sorry. Transform. Not necessarily, no. Rotate 45 degrees. A heart. I'm making a heart. I'm gonna make a nice little beating heart. Huh? Oh, for the motorcycle. I'm gonna make a heart. So I'm actually just gonna make this. Let's just make it red. You know what? Before doing that, so I made the bottom part red. I'm gonna make the other two parts red in a second. But before doing that, I want to show you this. So I want to make it look more like a heart. So I'm just gonna give this a border radius. Let's say 50%. All right, I'm gonna copy that and put it on the after and the before. So I just made them circles. And now I'm gonna change the color. Right. Oh, got a heart. Got a nice heart. Now that we got this heart, I want to add a nice animation to it, right? So keyframes. I'm gonna call it beat. That's gonna be beating heart. And basically, I want to make it grow at certain positions, right? During the duration of this animation. So at 0%, I'm gonna go back to something we used before, a different property, scale, right? And remember, scale, depending on the value that we put in here, it's gonna scale this element according to the size, right? So I actually want to keep it, 1 to its regular size, default size, right? So I don't want to change anything in the beginning, right? And I don't know, we can go wild with this. We can add a bunch. And we can add different positions here. 15, 25, I don't know, 30, 50, 70, 100. So at different points, I want this to do different things, right? So it's going to start off the default size, right? Let's say at 15%, still same size. 25, I'm going to make it scale up 1 to half its size, more. And then at 30, I'm going to make it come back down, right? And then at 50, I want to go back up. Then let's bring it back down a little bit. Let's add another one. And you know what? That's fine actually. Let's leave it like that. Yeah. No, let's add another one. Let's get crazy. And back to 4. So essentially, this is gonna look pretty crazy at different points, right? So I'm gonna add that animation to my heart. Ooh, right, gracias. Let's give that 80% then. Animation, remember you have to give it the name. I named it beat. Let's say this is gonna take, let's do 2 seconds for now. And I want it to go infinitely. Let's see if that works. Whoa, no, it doesn't. Why? Oh, wrong. We added it to the wrong thing. We don't want to add it to the after. We want to add it to the original. Oh, so you see that it's beating? It's back on its side. Because I forgot that when you give it, so basically I'm overriding this rotate because I didn't add it here. So what I need to do is I just need to add it to this as well. Because I want it to stay at 45 for the entire duration, so it doesn't stay on there. So I just need to add it. So now we got a beating heart. Woohoo! But as you can see, you can let your imagination go wild with this thing. Like, I completely created the heart by like just putting 3 boxes together, made 2 of them circles, added some animations, and you can like create something really nice. And you can go crazy. Like these are some other examples that I found on like CodePen. I mean, you could get like real simple stuff. It's just the egg, a happy egg, swinging back and forth, right? You can get a nice little loading screen. Let me just click all of these for now. Wait. So you get like a nice little loading screen, or just animating words. What's this one? Oh, this one's cool. I like this one. So when you click on the button, the background changes. Really smooth, really nice. I think I'm gonna try doing something like that for my portfolio. Or you can get real wild and do something like this one. I'm not at this level. Like, that is all CSS, no JavaScript. Like, that is nuts. I need to get to the point where I can do that because that's insane. But yeah, but you can get really crazy with like just simple transitions and animations and being creative and putting them together. So yeah, hopefully you learned something and thank you for listening in. If y'all got any questions or anything, throw them my way. Gracias.